Hey, Andrew here. Welcome back to another episode of Studio Time. Thank you for joining me today. I want to show you my ultimate recording and hybrid mix studio setup that's completely 100% in a house. I'm here in Nashville, and I have this house. We used to live in this house for over 2 years with my family, and I had one small room. Well, actually, it wasn't that small of a room, but a room above my garage, like many people in Nashville, that I had all of my studio stuff crammed in. And if you've seen any of those videos before, it looked ridiculous. Long story short, we bought a new house, moved out, and I have converted this entire house into a purpose-built studio. So I want to share with you exactly what I mean by purpose-built, how it works and the benefits of it, and then I'm going to walk you literally through the setup and show you exactly how I accomplish that. And I think you're going to get a lot of value from it. Part of my business is I do consultation calls where people schedule calls with me through my website, and we talk about this exact topic. This is like the main thing that people are interested in and want to learn about, and we just do a one-on-one call for an hour, and I kind of help them accomplish some of the things that I've learned in their studio. So I know that there's a lot of demand for this information, so I'm really excited to share it with you. So I want to start with the whole purpose-built thing. So my background is as an audio engineer. I came up in a commercial studio, the old school way, in Los Angeles at one of the coolest commercial studios. It's now called East West. It originally was Western Recorders back in the 60s, Sinatra, all the way through the 80s and 90s with like Guns N' Roses and then Tool. And then when I worked there, it was like Weezer and Muse and Common and Nas and Frank Ocean, John Mayer, John Legend. It was just, every day was freaking awesome. And I learned a ton. But at the core function of this studio, you have these different rooms and you're booking them for either one day or 1 week, or in some cases like 2 or 3 months for a client. But each new session you start, you're starting from scratch. That room is empty. So before you start a session, you have this plan and setup of picking out mics, laying out the room, plugging all the mics in, routing everything in the patch bay, label everything on the console and on the outboard gear, setting it all up in Pro Tools, and you got to start from scratch before every single session, which taught me a lot. And I gained a ton of value of seeing how many different producers and engineers choose to work, how they place people within the room, how they set up the mics on different instruments or for different groups of people to perform at the same time, or separate them to be performing at the same time. It was like the greatest learning experience I could have asked for, and with some of the coolest clients I could have learned from. And that was like 5 to 6 years of my life. So that is a huge part of what I choose to do when I work now as an engineer, or sometimes even as a producer or just a musician. I wear a lot of different hats. So I'm always pulling from those experiences and trying to apply them towards the end goal, which is the song. You want to have the right stuff to serve the song. Okay, so that's a big chunk of like this purpose-built thing. The next big chunk is when I moved to Nashville, I started a YouTube channel where I did these epic studio tours, and I went to so many people's studios, and most of them were here in Nashville, but there's a lot in Los Angeles, there was a couple in Las Vegas, I've done some in Texas, Kansas City, North Carolina, Indiana. There's been a lot of studios we've seen together, and that's what I love, is I can put them out on the internet and you guys can learn from them as well. But every different studio has a lot of common threads, and then they all have a little bit of like a unique nugget to them. So there was always something that I was pulling, like, oh, this is how you can organize stands this way. Oh, this is how you can keep your pedals organized in these drawers. Oh, this is how you can rattle your keyboards together. Oh, this is a great desk that I should 100% get. Oh, these speakers sound awesome. All of these things I have pulled and incorporated into my own setup based on the things that I liked and I saw value in. So that's a big contributor to how things are set up. And then the third part was a workflow thing. And that is to be able to walk up to an instrument, touch it, and hear sound either through speakers or headphones instantly without having to go and set things up. Where's the cables? Let's get the stand, without having to do any of that. We have drums in a drum room. I can walk in, I can sit down at the drums, I could put headphones on, I could play, and I hear the drums hitting our beautiful analog outboard mic pre's. I can pick up a guitar. I turn the volume up on the guitar, click the tuner, select the amp I want to use, play. I hear the guitar. It allows for instant creativity, instant collaboration, instant inspiration. If I have something, we have a track, and we go, I wonder what it would sound like if we put a little pad on it or something. I just turn my chair and I touch the keys and I can hear the pad. That flexibility of being able to just get that instant gratification from an instrument right when the idea strikes, because we all know what it's like when you're like, let's see what it sounds like if we add a keyboard. And then you go, shoot, where's the power cable? Or where's the stand? Or this is the wrong keyboard. And you go down this hunt for another thing, and you kind of lose that inspiration that you had right in that moment. And there's a lot of different potential ways that can happen in a recording studio. So I wanted to try to eliminate any of that friction that can come between having an idea and capturing it as fast as possible. So everything that can be recorded from an instrument in this studio is ready to record, and I can hit record because they're all going to their own dedicated inputs. So all of that is part one of the purpose-built side of this studio, is to allow for instant creativity, instant collaboration, and instant recording without having to have anything get in the way. It also feels good, it looks good, there's space for everything. That is gonna be the fruits of just having an entire house and being able to put things in different rooms. That rules. Now the second part of this is I came up in a commercial studio where we had awesome gear, awesome analog outboard gear. So with that workflow, I am still using analog equipment to accomplish that, both on the front end to record and get those sounds, and on the back end of mixing. All of it is accessible and immediately available to use without any setup. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. If you're curious about any of the equipment that you see in this video, instruments or gear, check the description. This video is sponsored by Sweetwater. You can get pretty much everything in this studio setup from Sweetwater. There are affiliate links that'll take you there. If you pick something up, then I get a small commission from your checkout at no extra cost to you. It's just a great way to support the channel. So check out those links in the description as we go through this video. And of course, if you do have any questions and you do want to book one of those consultations, you can still schedule a consultation call with me to talk about your studio and your setup. I'll put a link to that down in the description as well. So here's what that looks like. This is the control room right here. The placement of everything in this room is a part of the design of being able to accomplish all of these needs. Let's start over here. These are our outboard analog preamps that we're using. There are 28 channels of outboard preamps in this setup, and each of them has been selected for the source that I prefer them on. So these are all patched into everything that you can imagine using on a session. We've got live drums, percussion, bass, electric guitar, amps, keyboards, synth, room mics, we've got vocals. Everything you could possibly want to record is actually already patched in with levels ready to record, so we can actually not waste any time getting sounds. Obviously, sometimes we switch things up depending on the production of the song, but for the most part, we want to be as close to that ready to record as we can. And the benefit to having this workflow is that when a musician comes in, they can sit down at their instrument, put headphones on, play, and immediately hear what they're playing. And I'll show you exactly how I do this in the control room, but I also have this set up so that you can do that in the control room as well. So just by coming over here and touching keys, we're gonna actually hear what we're doing, so which allows us to come up with ideas and writing right at that moment if we're trying to come up with an idea. Same thing with guitar. I've shown this in other videos before. You literally just grab the guitar you want to use, put it on, select the amp. If you want to use a pedal, so this allows us to have guitar, keyboards, and then in the other two booths, we have microphones with lines ran to them. Everything's already set up. Headphone boxes next to each station, so you can just put headphones on and hear whatever it is you're playing. Here in Nashville, sessions move at a very fast pace, so being able to sit down, find the tone or the sound that you're getting with your particular instrument, very fast is extremely important. So that's why we have this room set up this way, as well as the drum booth and then the secondary booth as well. Now this workflow I've sort of picked up from a bunch of other producers and engineers by both working with them and visiting their studios and literally going through their setups and seeing how they work. I would recommend you learning from your peers as well, because there's always something new to be gained and a trick that you can add into your studio workflow. Now, the way that I can both track and mix with everything set up at the same time without having to go in and patch and move things around has to do with the interface that I'm using. So the interface is right here next to the preamp. Again, pay attention to the flow of this room. We have preamps over here, patch bay and interface here. We have the desk here, and I'll get into the ergonomics and the flow of the desk in a moment. Again, the brain of this system, the way everything works is because of this interface that I'm using. This is the Galaxy 32 Synergy Core. Antelope Audio makes this interface. It has 32 channels of analog inputs. It's kind of a whole thing. I've made a video on the interface. If you're interested, you can check that out. There's a few different videos because it's kind of a whole topic. But this is the brain, the core of this whole system. 32 analog channels connected via the Antelope Audio Galaxy 32. And then I've actually used the MADI inputs to expand an additional 32 inputs. Sounds like a lot, but yes, that's because we have a lot of inputs and we have a lot of I/O that we use for connecting all of the outboard equipment for mixing in a hybrid workflow, which I'll get to. Without getting too into the weeds here, you can think about it as 32 channels, 32 channels. The first 32 are set to all of our inputs. So drums, guitars, bass, keys, microphones, percussion. Anything with a microphone is going to the first 32 channels of the interface. The second 32 channels are dedicated to hardware inserts. So all of those hardware inserts are permanently patched using channels 33 to 64, or however many I'm using. I'm not using all 32 channels, but we have a lot. And all of those I/O are connected to the outboard equipment up here in the desk, which I use for mixing. All right, so let's talk about the layout again. I have everything positioned in the room where it makes sense to have it for when I need it. So if I'm sitting in this chair and getting levels, I'm gonna have my Galaxy 32 control panel up where I can see my levels, and I can be here adjusting the sounds, watching my inputs over there, as well as being able to control everything. But once my inputs are set, I no longer need to be over here. And we come over to this desk. Everything that is in this desk is designed to be in the most efficient placement that it can be to serve the needs of what I'm doing. We can essentially break this up into 3 different sections here. We have our center section, which is everything that is the most important that I need to be able to reach quickly. This is gonna be everything from speaker volume to faders, mix volume from our session that we're working on. And then the second section is gonna be, it's still in the center, but it is this monitor right here, and then these 2 500 racks. And then the third section is our outside racks, our left and the right, which is where all of our compressors are. So if we look at our center section here, again, most important on the session, I need to be able to reach for the volume quickly. And then the second thing is our talkback. So my talkback switch is immediately close to me. I never have to go look for it. I can grab my speaker volume, dim, talkback. This is like main control for everything that we're doing. Right next to that, in front of me, is going to be our faders for our mix. When I'm working is a hybrid workflow, which means the whole session is inside of Pro Tools. And all of the automating that I'm doing
some of the effects that we're using are all taking place inside of Pro Tools here. Okay, so directly in front of me are our faders. These are the SSL UF8 and UF1. These are connected USB to the computer and are directly tied to the session that we're working on. So when I'm mixing, automating the levels is one of the most important parts of the mixing process. Now I mix with outboard hardware, but the way that I control my mix and I automate things is with these controllers. I'll put a link to all this stuff down below if you want to check it out. All right, now this next part's gonna seem kind of silly. It's right behind the faders, which is our computer monitor. There is definitely something to having the monitor a little bit closer to you than further. Some of you may remember I used to have a console and I had to keep my monitor pretty far away from me. Keeping it closer prevents eye strain, especially if you're like, if we're looking at this thing most of the workday, you don't want to be uncomfortable. So having it closer is preventing the eye strain, as well as keeping my physical posture in a much more comfortable position so that I actually, am comfortable working and can see everything that I'm trying to do. Now, just outside of the computer monitor here, we've got a handful of things. We've got our talkback microphone. So this mic is always here. So whenever I do the talkback or somebody else is speaking to someone in the other room, that mic is always live. And then we have our left side 500 rack and our right side 500 rack. So here's what's inside of them. On the left side, we have our Undertone Audio UT-EQ 500s, SSL EQ 611s, and we have the Pultec EQP 500X. On the right side, we have our effects unit with the RMX16, which has reverbs, delays, and modulation. So typically when you go to use an EQ, you need to be able to hear those changes that you're making. And I used to have a lot of rack-mounted EQs, famous last words. I have switched over and embraced using the 500 series simply for the reason I can have it directly in front of me. So I can sit here and I can automate, control my speaker volume, see my monitor, keep my ears directly pointed at my speakers, and I can EQ in my mix without having to go to an outboard rack or leave my mixing position. So this is a part of having a just completely common sense workflow in the hybrid domain. And then just on the outside of the center section, we have 2 racks here. And inside of these racks are compressors or transient related devices. So on the left side, we have LA2 from Audioscape, we have a bus comp from Warm Audio, and then we have the SSL Bus Plus. The LA2 is almost exclusively used on bass, sometimes on vocals. It's a fantastic opto compressor. This is a VCA compressor, which I permanently use on the drum bus. This thing, I've shot it out with some others. It absolutely smacks on drums. And typically the only thing I ever reach for to adjust is the threshold. These are the settings that I prefer and that just seem to work over and over. EQs, we have the undertones. I will use these on guitars, either electric or acoustic. The SSLs are also on the drum bus, so the drums are hitting the bus comp and then the SSL EQs. This Pultec will bounce around either between bass or snare drum. It's a Pultec, sounds really good, and this version of it sounds amazing. I don't know what they crammed in there or how they made it fit. The original Pultecs are very large. That thing sounds so good. Over here on our right side, we have the Warm Audio WA1B tube opto comp, and then we have the UA1176. These are the 260 VUs from Audioscape, and then the Transient Designer. Now this, I know if you've seen my videos before, you've seen me go through a lot of different gear and try a lot of different stuff. I am so overly happy with the pieces that we have in the system right now. Sometimes I'll use these 260s on acoustics if they're doubled, or electric guitars if they need it. Most of the time I'm not using compressors. On electric guitars, the 1176, I can't believe this, but lives on the kick drum. Sounds so good on the kick. Obviously 1176 could be useful on anything, and if I could have just a big fat stack of them, I would. And then the 1B is on vocals. Actually, the 1B here is the only compressor that I will use both on the recording side as well as the mixing side. All right, so let's talk about this hardware insert thing. So if you're not familiar with hardware inserts, this is how I'm mixing in the box, meaning using Pro Tools, but using outboard equipment in the box. Now, if that doesn't make sense, here's another way of understanding it. I'm essentially connecting all of this outboard equipment to my interface, and then I can use it like I use a plugin, meaning I can jump on a track here and literally insert a piece of hardware. So if I hit play, you should be able to hear this. You can hear the drums, right? I have the drums hitting the bus comp and the SSL EQ. So if I turn these off, here's the drums without the bus comp and SSL EQ. So this is them dry, and I can insert via Pro Tools, bus comp, and the EQ. Now I can also come over here and control my levels on the outboard gear. So we have our compressor bypass. That's it, out. In, same thing here, EQs. Out. In. So again, the whole idea here is I can mix facing my speakers listening and hear these changes that I'm making in real time. So I can go over and adjust the bass compression, level. Same thing, kick drum. The hardware connects to your interface using your inputs and your outputs. So if you're going to insert a piece of outboard gear, you're going to use your outputs on the send or the path that you want to insert something. So I have 64 channels of inputs and outputs. Again, the first 32 are recording. So those are only microphones. I'm not using any of those inputs and outputs for outboard gear. That's the second half, which is 33 through 64, whatever I have. I think there's 33 through 48 or something. So every piece of outboard gear is connected to an output and then gone back into an input. So for example, the mix bus hits this SSL bus plus. The way that I get to it is I output 31 or whatever the channel. Actually, let's take a look at it. The way that I keep track of this stuff, since I can't keep track in my brain, is I have input sheets for my microphones and for my inserts. So we can just look right at it here. The SSL bus plus, which is on our entire mix, is on outputs and inputs 41 and 42. So if I want to connect to this and put it on my mix, I'm coming out in 41, 42 to connect to my SSL bus plus. So I'm outputting 41 and 42, and that is patched literally from interface outputs 41, 42 into my SSL bus plus right here. And then this, so you can see the signal on the meter hitting for our whole mix. I can turn it off. On my mix, and then I come out of the SSL bus plus back into 41, 42. And they have to be matching inputs and outputs. So the 41 in has to be the same as 41 out, so it can make that path. Now with some interfaces, you're gonna get some problems, and there's gonna be delay or latency as we know it. With the interface I'm using, the Galaxy 32, it has a feature called automatic delay compensation, which means it can make that round trip to the outboard equipment and compensate for that delay that's going to happen from sending through the path that it goes through. So I don't have to think about anything. I literally just patch it on the patch bay, and then I insert it, and everything just works. There's no latency, there's no complicated, unnecessary math that needs to be done. It just works. But it also allows me to have these extra digital mixers so that I can do no latency direct monitoring, which is what I was showing you before, how I can actually monitor something immediately. And the way that this works on the interface is you essentially have 4 different digital internal mixers that you can route any signal to and from. So I have a mixer set up with a bunch of submixes, and those submixes come from different sources that I have connected to the interface on the recording side. So the synth is connected to channels 19 and 20, right? And then 19 and 20 show up on my inputs, and I can route those internally because this has an internal patch bay. You can route things digitally to one of these digital mixers, and I can sit here and I can play and write instantly and hear and monitor whatever the sounds I'm playing with, you know, so I can get that instant feedback. So the way that the control room monitoring works so that I can hear everything that I'm doing live is I have one of these mixers set up that has all of the things that I want to monitor routed to it and balanced in a mix that I can just turn the speakers up and hear it exactly how I want to. It's a really, really great feature. And then I take that output of the entire mixer and I route it to its own outputs, which go to my monitor controller. So my monitor controller has 2 settings that I jump between. Essentially, output left and right going to the speakers is the first setting, and the second setting is one of these digital mixers that allows me to direct monitor all of my inputs with no latency. So we can all play at the same time in the studio, drums, bass, guitar, keys, if we have vocals, everything can be happening at the same time, and I can literally be hearing it come out of the speakers while I sit in here without Pro Tools open. And then if I am ready to record, those inputs are also routed, patched, and ready to go. That's how I have everything set up here in the studio. If you do have questions, one of the things I'll say is on my website, I'll put a link to it down below, andrewmastersmusic.com, I offer consultations, and this is like probably the most common set of questions that I get is everything that I've went over. How do I set my studio up so that I can have all of the instruments mic'd, ready to use, but also direct monitor them? Now keep in mind, I'm not using a Pro Tools HD setup. This is just Pro Tools native with a Galaxy 32. So if you have questions and you want to book a call with me, you can do that at my website. A lot of people don't know this. It's a Zoom call consultation where we just talk for an hour. You can ask any questions. You can show me your studio setup. Check that out. You can schedule a call if it's open on the website. By the way, that's one of my favorite things to do, is to just get to meet you guys and talk one-on-one, see how you do things. And then lastly, if you like this video and you like topics like this, hit the subscribe button here on Studio Time. That way you can get notified when new videos come out. I will have one soon coming out on the routing of how we have headphones set up for the entire studio. That's going to be a fun one. I've had a lot of questions recently about how do you have headphones where people can control what they're hearing and not have to handle it. It's a whole thing, but we're going to make a concise, simple video, so make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. One of the things that we're planning for this coming month is a in-studio drum recording workshop. Join me here in the studio and do a drum recording workshop, probably over 2 days. One day directly with me, the second day with me, but we're gonna actually do a session with a session drummer. So if you're interested in that, follow me on Instagram or make sure you're subscribed to this channel. More info about that. If there's a link to it, I'll put that down below. But we'll see how that goes. I'm really excited to do that. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.